This is Technology in the Math Classroom by Julie Gillum and Jennifer Ray. The purpose of this video is to explore the way teachers use technology in the math classroom and how it can benefit student achievement and motivation.
I'm Kevin Dale. I teach at Alexander High School. I teach calculus, pre-calculus, and algebra 2.
I am Jill McClurg, and I teach high school math at Logan High School, Logan Hucking Schools. I teach Algebra 2, Algebra 2 Honors, Integrated Math 2 for sophomores, and OGT Math.
My name is Brian Dorsey. I'm a high school math teacher at Miller High School located in Corning, Ohio. I teach Algebra 1, Algebra 1 CP, Algebra 2, Algebra 2 CP, stats, and consumer math.
My name is Caitlin McClurg, and I teach mostly freshmen and sophomores in Algebra 1 and Geometry, and I also have one junior level class of pre-calculus, and I teach at Millersport High School in the Walnut Township School District. I think that when students are doing computations using technology, they can compute faster, and then it doesn't take as much time for them to just work out the problems, and so when they do more problems, they can see trends in the problems and pick up on that faster.
For me in my algebra classes, it takes the abstract algebraic ideas and concepts that the students need to learn, and I can provide concrete visuals that they can go off of, and they can actually see what's happening in graphs and tables, things like that.
Well, first it mixes it up a little bit, like when we use the PowerPoints instead of my just standing up and lecturing or them taking notes, and so I can get them personally involved in what we're doing. And as far as using the calculators go, when we don't use the calculators, then they tend to get bogged down in the computations, and they never get elevated beyond a point where we can look at what they've done and analyze some of their results and that sort of thing.
I think it's very important to use technology. I have students use technology. I use technology for presentations, and I have students explore with technologies. I think it has lots of uses. It helps with students model problems that they can't otherwise do. I think it helps for conceptual understanding. It simplifies tasks that would be tedious, pencil paper tasks that otherwise would be just tremendously tedious for students.
Right.
And the other thing is students have technology around them all the time. They know how to use it.
I use graphic calculators, the TI-83 Plus, in my Algebra 2 classroom. We graph parabolas, linear equations, cubics. We use it for linear regressions, scatter plots, tables, matrices, and I also use computer to present ideas and lessons, such as PowerPoint, and I've used it to teach lessons in exponential growth, to show exponential functions, and I've used Excel, Microsoft Excel in my stats classes to gather data, place data in tables, and then used the ability to create graphs, pie charts, line graphs from the data.
Mr. Dorsey mentioned using Excel. In this example, we conducted a survey of eye colors, entered the data, and were able to make a bar graph. However, there are other graphs available in Excel, such as line graphs and circle graphs.
In my classroom, I use a smartboard and the smart response clickers. Each student has one, and they log in using their student ID number for their lunch number, and it automatically comes on. It says hello and then their name. And with that, since it's connected to my computer, they can answer questions, and I can see who answered what, who answered correctly, how many answered correctly, what questions the class as a whole are having trouble with, and all of that comes up on my computer, but it's all anonymous to the students, so there's no anxiety about answering wrong or anything like that.
Caitlin described using student response systems in her classroom. This is a picture from Turning Technologies of a student response system and the USB drive that links the response system to the teacher's computer.
I use graphing calculators. I have students using graphing calculators. I use the computer for presentations. I have 17 computers in my classroom, so
That's wonderful.
I have students using computers regularly to explore algebra concepts. Pre-calculus and calculus students all have their own graphing calculators. Some of my Algebra 2 students have their own graphing calculators, but I do have a classroom set of graphing calculators. I have a classroom set of TI-84s and the first generation of TI-Inspires. I do have robotics kits for my classroom, and so I have integrated some robotics material into the teaching of algebra. And so I have had students do some programming. Traditional algebra problem, if you have two trains going in opposite directions.
Yes,
and
I remember
how far-
those.
Well, I can demonstrate that because I can have two robots going in opposite directions at different speeds, and we can measure each speed, and so I can actually demonstrate that. Oh, motion detectors, I use those in algebra classes, and I use that for linear functions, or for to teach about functions in namely time and distance relationships. And I typically use what's called graph match. I've done that, where I want students to look at a graph, verbally describe a graph, what it means, and then actually move to match the graph. And I think that
Okay.
helps students understand by looking at the graph, explaining it first, and then moving to it gives them a better understanding of what, like for instance, time distance means.
This is a picture of a motion detector supplied by Texas Instruments. Veneer software is capable of using this data from the motion detector to create a graph showing different rates, such as time versus distance.
We have the OGT calculators that are scientific calculators. We have the projector that's at the top of the ceiling so that we can use anything from the computer and project it to the front. And we have document readers.
Okay. Do you have a clas.m2t?
No, not
No,
yet.
you don't. You have one, right? That you
I
use.
have one,
Okay.
yes.
And you're able to hook that up to your computer.
Yeah, I have the software to do that, yeah.
This is a picture of a TI Inspire, which Mrs. McClurg uses in her classroom to create graphs and project them onto a screen. These calculators are also good for collecting data using probes, storing types of data, and will create a spreadsheet from this data.
Takes them a little bit more. They like playing with the computers. They like playing with the calculators when we get to use them. And I mean, they're off and running when they have a calculator.
It keeps the students engaged in the lesson. They get really excited when we use the smartboard because we don't use it every day. And they like to come up and do examples on the smartboard more than if they just went to the chalkboard to show examples.
I think it does motivate students to try things because they're used to using technology. It helps motivate the learning process in that they can make connections between concepts.
It gives them something concrete to see. It gives them another way to see it, another way to get the information. So through video and to see the charts and graphs, and see the graph of a parabola, and you know what it's talking about when you complete the square and you're finding this vertex and transformations and all these things, and then matrices and things like that. Some of the stuff on pencil and paper, a student would almost never be able to do, like taking the inverse of a 3x3 matrix, or something like that, and finding the determinant of a 3x3 matrix. And with the technology and the TI-83s, all of my students can do it. It can give them a deeper understanding, more comprehension, show them how math is actually used in the real world.
And I think the exposure to how to use different technologies is important.
Because I think technology is changing so rapidly that if they use it now, they won't be as far behind to use newer technology that comes out within the next few years. And I think they'll stay up to date on how to use newer calculators that are coming out and newer programs that come on the computer.
I think eventually, well, I know, we've already piloted the end of the year test for Algebra 2. And one day is a calculator test and one day is without a calculator test. So those kids that haven't been exposed to the graphing technology will be so lost and so at a disadvantage.
Using any technology, yeah, anywhere will benefit.
It is apparent that these math teachers are advocates for technology in the classroom. As technology becomes more advanced, it is essential for students to familiarize themselves with it for achievement, motivation, and for their future endeavors.